Tell the truth. 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 Today we're talking about setting your marketing budget, okay? There's lots of different ways to do it. We have our way of doing it that we've developed over a long time, and I want to show you that way and tell you why you should do it that way too. Because that's what we do here on The Truth About Marketing. If you're tasked with growing a B2B company and we want to help you make better decisions, stop throwing your money away on marketing that doesn't work and avoid getting ripped off in the Wild West floating dumpster fire that is today's marketing industry. That's what it says right there. I like that wordsmithing. But so let's talk budgeting. Doesn't that sound exciting? We'll get to the sexy stuff in a minute. I want to show you our model, the model that we built that I will also send you if you shoot me a private message. I'll send you this model that you can use also to figure out a marketing budget that works. So there's at least three ways of doing it, not counting a wild ass guess or what we like to say the WAG method. One is arbitrary. Okay, you can set a budget arbitrarily. We have 20 grand for this year because that's what I think it should be. Or, so a whim, it's an educated guess. It's a percentage that we think, but it's not based on anything empirical. Number two, you can base it on historical. Okay, what did we spend last year? Let's spend that and a little more. Or let's cut that. But it's all based on what was spent before. Or actual, based on real world data and understanding your cost of acquisition. And if you know me, you know which one I'm going for. Number three. Oh, need one more ring there. Number three, this is a great way to do it because it's realistic, uses real data. All right. So now cost of acquisition or cost of customer acquisition or CAC, as the techies like to say, it's not really that hard to figure out. It's a little bit harder for startups because they don't have historical data to kind of look at, oh, hey, what's our cost of acquisition now and what should it be? But you can still use this model and you can still figure out what it actually is going to cost rather than just being a wild ad guess. So essentially you divide the number of either customers, deals, transactions. You got to customize this model for your business. But however you do it, you divide the transactions by the amount of money you invested to win those deals. So how much each deal is worth and then how much you're willing to invest to win a deal. So, or a client or however you want to set it up. But again, before we get to the sexy math, I want to mention something. This is important. If you just take what's on the P&L under sales, marketing, sales line, marketing line, there's a good chance that you're missing money that's being spent that directly contributes to customer acquisition, but it's not necessarily right under that line item, right? It might be a separate line item like trade shows, right? Where it really should be, in my non-CPA opinion, on your accounts as a subcategory of marketing. Sometimes it's not. And there can be all kinds of things that aren't reflected in a company's financials based on how they set them up. So the more you can hunt down what's really going into bringing the customer into the door, the better your number is going to be. So let me show you this model really quick, and I hope you can read the numbers. They're kind of small on my screen, but anyway, here it is in all its glory. Isn't it beautiful? Not meant to be easy on the eyes, but this is how it works. So we can edit these green areas. And so this thing actually does a lot more than just figure out cost of acquisition. But for today, we're just going to talk about that aspect of it. Up here, this is just reproducing what's down here in kind of a summary. And usually for every client, this gets a little bit different depending on how they, maybe they're a month-to-month transaction reoccurring revenue model, or maybe they're one large purchase forever and those customers don't buy again, or anything in between. This can be modified for that. But so you put your average transaction size. It's right now it says $10. Let's increase that to 1,000. All right. So let's say that we've got, in this case, we've got $600,000 in sales. Let's just put round numbers in here. We spent 100,000 on sales. We spent 90,000 on sales, And so now we've got all of our variables set, and you can see there's some color coding here. What this is really telling us is a whole bunch of different metrics, really. But the one that we're looking for right now is cost of acquisition. So if this was our historical information from last year, for every deal or customer or whatever it is we're putting in here, brought in, we spent $950 or 31.67% of revenue. Okay, percentage of revenue right here. And you go down here, and in this scenario, you've got a 33x lifetime marketing return on investment. Lifetime value 2% you've invested of their lifetime value annually. That's 31.67. Beep, 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 beep. See how that's red? That's too much money. That budget is too high. All right. So, and then this and this. All right. So then you look at it and you say, that's last year. Now, what do we want it to be, right? What do we, let's say that our goal here is to raise the average transaction by just $500. Let's make it even less, $1,250, okay? And you can watch how much these numbers change. And we're going to just keep the purchases the same, just we don't want too many variables. We're going to keep that the same. But this time we're going to close 300 customers. And so, again, this is predictive. And so that's, let's say, management says, hey, we need a $2 million in annual revenue. Well, you can work these numbers so that you can figure out about how many deals you need to get to what, and what your average transaction price should be. See, we're still only at 1.5. So, and, maybe we want our profit margin to be 20%. All right. Now, let's put in last year's. And even though, we're using historical reference, I wanted to put in the same number here, because you see that something happens. You're spending the same amount of money, but your cost of acquisition dropped dramatically. And that's because you've increased this by 150%. You've increased their annual value by the same. And you've increased the number of closed deals by 175%. And so the ROI on lifetime value goes nuts. Cost of acquisition. So this is actually telling me, again, it's turned red again. You see this? What that actually means is now our some of our numbers are either too low or there's something that's not really right. And so now we can use this as a model to try to get decent numbers. And it's going to tell us a very rough number, right? And so I'm just putting low numbers in. So in this case, we've got this, we're spending 7%. So this tells us we can come up a little bit here, up a little bit here. To get this in the range, you might have to manipulate these, right? You might have to change kind of how you're doing things or what your objectives are and what some of your baselines are. And so, it means working harder and trying to hit that new cost of acquisition number. But at the end of the day, you're asking yourself, am I willing to invest $357 to bring in $67,000 of lifetime value or $4,500 of customer value that year? So in a way, that's really step one. But this gives you, and you can say, hey, well, if we're willing to spend $357 per customer and we need 350 customers, you multiply those two together, that's your marketing budget. At least that's your rough budget, right? It's rough still. But it's pretty close to what, where you want your numbers to be. The next step, and a lot of firms don't do this, and I think it's really where the rubber hits the road. It's one of the biggest complaints we see from clients is that, hey, they gave us this document and we don't know what to do with it. We can't implement it. We're not sure what to do with it. And so it's really because this piece is missing. It's a 12-month tactical schedule where you're actually going out and looking at real-world prices. Let's say that you need to update the website. You need to, you're going to attend 3 different trade shows this year. you have the specifics now in your plan, because hopefully you're engaged in a planning process and you've got your ducks in a row. And so you kind of know what you need to do, and you can go out and look at market prices, add those up, okay, and then look at your spreadsheet model again, and how different are they, right? Again, and then it starts to be a push and pull between the two until you get to a stasis, and really that's going to be about the threshold between marketing just being an expense because you really didn't get anything from it, or you didn't nearly get enough to offset it, or marketing being an investment where it brings in 8 times more, 10 times more, 15 times more than what you spent. Okay, if your marketing did that, it would change the whole equation. The trick is, let's say you've figured out how to get 15x return on your marketing dollar. You might think that, well, gosh, I'd be happy with a 7.5, so I'm just going to cut that budget in half, and we'll get 7.5 times, and I'm going to be really happy. The reason this exercise is important is because it doesn't really work that way. You could spend an awful lot of money and never get past the break-even point, right? You can just stay right underneath it for a long time, spending quite a bit of amount of money because you never develop momentum, right? So think of your marketing and sales like a big giant flywheel. If that flywheel isn't already spinning, let's say it's spinning very slowly or it's stopped, you have to apply a lot more energy to get it spinning. Might mean that you run your percentages a little more aggressively. It usually does. Then when you have it spinning, it takes a lot less energy to keep it spinning. And so it's in order to cross that threshold into ROI territory, you've got to at least spend enough to get momentum. It's going to vary between industries and different companies. So, if you're curious about this, you want to try and mess around with this model, you want to try it, just shoot me a private message and I'll send you a copy of this. And I hope this is helpful, even with the crazy technical problems. And you learned a little bit. This is how we figure out budgets. And it's funny, over the years, I'll pat myself on my back. Boy, are we getting accurate with this. I mean, after doing it, I don't know how many thousands of times, it's pretty darn close, right? Doesn't have to be exact. We're not trying to, we're not using a micrometer, we're just trying to figure out what do we have to work with, how is it going to work within our finances and our situation and our comfort and our, the company circumstances. And the best part is when somebody asks you what your cost of acquisition is, that number, and you've consciously decided what you will invest to bring in a deal rather than just doing the old WAG, right? So we don't like the old WAG here on The Truth About Marketing. We like to use data. So we're going to keep this one short, and I'm sure we'll edit out all that craziness. But thanks for tuning in. We do this every Thursday, 11 o'clock, me and my good friend and colleague, Bill Lowell, who's off today. And you can just follow me, check out the links in the comments, and you'll get to see more The Truth About Marketing. Also, I believe we're letting the cows out of the barn on the truthaboutmarketingpodcast.com. So if you like this type of content, maybe you're a marketing leader that is responsible for getting things up and running and better and improving and growing. There's a wealth of information there. We've been doing this 11 and a half months now, every single Thursday. And so we're committed to it. We hope you are too. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, everywhere fine podcasts are consumed. And we appreciate you watching. Until next week, we're still going to tell the truth about marketing, whether you like it or not.